Back by popular demand, it's Fran Fight Round 2 coming up next. All right, who wants to pick a fight this week?
No fights. This is all about productive conversation. But I think in the framework of a Fran fight, that's not really a fight. We could just take two polar positions here and evaluate them.
I like that. That seems fun. All right, what do we want to create an opinion on?
Well, I know one of your favorite topics, if it were under the Fran fight banner, would be me as a franchisor upset about I'm not getting leads. And
I like this one.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know if I'm teeing this up too much.
Let Brent go first. Brent goes first.
Go on like a 2-hour conversation
about blah blah. So you and I are Fran fighting now. All right, Brent, franchisor. One of your baby puppy franchisors says I'm not getting enough leads. How do you address that?
So I'm going to try and go the opposite of what you would go, because I think the problem here, Nick, is I think we're aligned on that question. So how do we get to the polar opposites? Because we're both going to say the same thing, that it's an irrelevant metric almost.
All right, well, let's fight against franchisor.
So me as franchisor, I get that you guys are going to say this.
This is good. I like this role. I like Charles playing this role.
Yeah. Because I could empathize with it too. I mean, not knowing what I didn't know. I mean, I went to a franchise conference with a brand new brand and, receive leads and all this other stuff. But so I understand that there's so much more here, and I'm a believer too. I mean, but I need some objective data also, because I do believe that my ratio of leads to conversions, if I know I'm operating with a certain ratio between leads to conversions, if I increase leads, in theory, I should be increasing conversions.
You should, yeah. So, I mean, it's a good indicator, right? I think that you can't just completely say they're irrelevant. But I think that, you've got to start, there's got to be lead flow, and you've got to understand conversion metrics along the way. I think what they're really asking, though, is where are the deals, right? That's what they don't care how many people fill out their form. They care about how many people they sign franchise agreements. And that's where they think it starts. And again, it's an indicator, and that's fair. But the where deals and won and lost, where brands either hit or they don't, is not so much how many initial leads they get, whether it's 500 a month or 20 a month. It's the sales process that they go through along the way. It's the demand for the particular industry or segment, and that's out of their control sometimes, right? But they have to understand they can't compare themselves to other brands or other industries who have X number of leads or deals. So just the actual demand for it. And then finally, how strong the business model is. And this is usually the biggest one that's overlooked, and it's the one that matters the most. Is the item 19 strong enough, and the franchisees validating that they're making money and they're happy? And if those two things aren't buttoned up along the way, take the industry out of it. If the process is not buttoned up and it's not an immature, established, effective franchise education or sales process, and if you don't have the economics and the franchisees to say it works, it doesn't matter if you get 5 or 500 leads, you're going to be in the same situation of saying, where's the leads? Because what you're really saying are where the deals. So to the Mr. Franchisor, Charles, I would say, yes, let's look at the number of leads, but are we sure we've got the process buttoned up, and are we sure we got the economics and validation buttoned up? And if they are, then great. We've got to look at how we're positioning the brand, what channels we're using, what marketing sources we're using, what collateral we're using. But that is secondary. That is of less importance and less impact unless the process, unless the economics, and unless the franchisees are saying it works.
A little bit of a comment, and then I think I have an idea on how we can work to something really productive. All right, my comment is this. It's twofold. One is there's no clear benchmarking in franchising. So we go to an IFA conference and we say, well, how many leads are you getting? What are you paying cost per lead? And so we benchmark against everybody, as in everybody's created equal. But the metrics swing up. How many units? What is the investment? What is the return? How many have closed? Is there any litigation? How many franchisees are expanding? And so because it slides so much, I think the thing that I'm most critical about in this industry is we compare our numbers based on what we hear versus back to matched data, which I get. Like in a dating pool, Brent probably had much more success than I did dating because he's a better looking guy. And so if I'm like, but Brent gets more leads than I do, it's because I'm not looking in the mirror and saying, but I'm not a good looking guy. It's but Brent has other qualities. Like he's got abs. My abs are buried behind my belly. Like there's things that just hide in this process. Okay, so that's one. Two is I've tried preaching this. If you spend $100 per lead, spend $200 per lead, take your lead count down to 50 and watch the conversion rate get stronger because you're committing more energy and money back to the lead generation process. So those are my two comments. Here's where I think we could get productive. All right. It's like Nick Magic. All right, Brent, you've been doing this for a while. I want you to think back 5 years ago. Got it? Okay.
Got it.
Charles had a full afro at that point. Think of 3 franchisees that you placed. Like get them locked in your head. Different brands are fine, but think through 3 franchisees that you're proud of where they place, okay?
I don't think I can. We're not set up like that. My team could, but
Okay.
I could think of 3 brands that were placing franchisees.
Take the brand. Yeah, I could think of 3 brands that you worked with 5 years ago that you had impact for. Okay, so let's say brand 1. To think of brand 1, you don't have to say the brand. What's the investment range on brand 1 that you're thinking of?
Okay, let's go 75 to 130,000 on brand number 1 that comes to mind.
Okay, and this. Think of a typical franchisee in there today. How many units does someone that you guys placed 5 years ago have in this? It could be somewhat fake scenario, but think about how many units.
They are at about 350 right now.
No. Think of a franchisee.
Oh, okay. So how many?
Yeah, 5 locations open, 3 locations, 1 location.
So on this brand, 2 max.
Okay. So 2 locations open, and then what's the AUV? Rough AUV.
We're 5 years ago?
No, now.
Okay. Just under $1 million.
Okay. Okay. Now think of another brand. What is the investment? Top side of the investment.
High end back then would have been about 600,000.
Okay. And a franchisee 5 years later, one that you guys placed, how many units would they potentially have?
Let's go with 2.
Okay. 2 and AUVs?
1.1.
Okay, 1.1. So 2. Okay, so we'll call that 120. Okay, and then give me one more investment range.
Damn, 5 years ago. Okay, yeah, let's do 200 to 600,000.
Okay, and how many locations would a franchisee that you place there have?
1.
Okay, and what's AUV?
700,000.
Okay. So if we did that math for argument's sake, and you're not going to be able to see this clearly, but here's the way that I just looked at it. And I think this goes back to Charles's statement on leads. And Brent, what you said on really what we're focusing on is deals. So in those 3 scenarios, if all of those brands said, where are my leads? I want more leads. I need more leads. A lead through Raintree that converted to deal on investment 1 was $130,000 investment, 2 locations at $1 million AUV means $2 million a year is what that franchisee is grossing today, which means it's $100,000 at a 5% royalty back to the franchisor per year. Multiply that by 5. Call that a $500,000 real cash of impact that Raintree had back to brand 1. On brand 2, and at 130,000, arguably we would say is a lot easier to sell. There's a lot more people that could qualify for the 130. Investment number 2 at 600, 2 locations, 1.1 AUV, 2.2 million for the 2 locations that franchisee now has. So impacts about $120,000 per year. So now we're talking about $600,000 in cash over the last 5 years. This franchisee has contributed back to the system. The last one at a $300,000 investment, somewhere in the middle, at a $700,000 AUV, is a $35,000 payout because they can only max out at 1, or this particular franchisee did. So it's 35,000 times 5, so it's worth $180,000 in cash back. And so if you go through this impact exercise, the reality is, 1, we're making all leads considered equal at the beginning stage. But let's say all of them were spending about the same from a development budget, which is pretty standard. But let's say to get the one that was $300,000 that now brings in $700,000 a year, which is worth $180 versus the $130 investment that had 2 locations at a $2 million AV, 100,000 times 5, $180. That's a swing of $320,000 more on scenario 1. And so this is my issue with lead generation. We create them all equally. We consider the sale as equal. But here, the economic impact that Raintree contributed back to in these 3 scenarios, $500,000, $600,000, and $180,000, respectfully, the variance is so large. And so when you think about lead generation, and we think about what are we willing to invest into that deal, this is how you start doing the math to get a real understanding. And Charles said I would talk for an hour. I almost just did. But
He did. No, I'm joking. That Nick, look, I think that analysis that you just applied is an analysis that unfortunately so many emerging brands don't understand, or not that they understand, but for them at the moment, they're in survival mode, right? And so, sometimes they just don't know it, and they do need to look at that perspective. So for sure, I think we can baseline that a quality. I see it all day, so I'll see clients, and so look, there's value in quality leads. Myself as a business, we look at data over the years. As our revenues increased and our conversions have increased, our inbound leads have plummeted, right? Ironically, but so it's quality over quantity for sure. I think if we're talking about a Fran fight, so many emerging and new franchisors are led to enter the franchise space under the belief that franchise sales are hard or easy. And so the pathway that I would typically see in conversation is I sign up, become a franchisor. They're handling my leads. They're handling my website. We're running some portals. And so what they find out 2 years later is volume of leads, of poor quality leads, are useless. So now as a franchisor, so if I'm learning from you and Brent, right, which I think is very valuable here. Number 1, I'm picking up from you, Nick, like, hey, franchisor, you better think about long-term enterprise value and understand far beyond the initial franchise fee and the feel-good moment of I sold 3 units. There's tremendous enterprise value for that one good franchisee over the 20 headaches that create litigation. And then I'm projecting forward and I understand that value. When Brent spoke earlier, for me, what was very striking also, again, in my franchisor hat that doesn't exist. So for everyone out there who says, why is Charles giving advice? He doesn't know anything. I get it. I understand. What was interesting as Brent broke down his analysis between, it's lead generation and conversion. And I think one of the answers to me as a franchisor is, Charles, you could be focused on leads as a KPI and benchmark, but you need to understand that lead generation is a very different department or organism than conversion, and very different from signing up a new franchisee. So I think one of the problems franchisors have, or I have, is we're conflating lead gen with conversion, and then we're just muddying up the water, and then we don't understand. And I think, from this conversation, I'm pulling out is, look, franchisor, lead gen, important. KPIs, critical. That's fine. What does your conversion process look like and your conversion ratios? And unless you're optimizing your conversion engine, we can't truly evaluate your lead gen. And I think one of the problems in the industry, because I know it's funny, because when either I'm talking to a client about mainland, and sometimes they don't understand the value of, hey, you need to build that foundation and story and base before you go into lead gen. Or I give an example, they'll bring up a client that's scaling and growing. I'm like, yeah, they're a Raintree brand. And by the way, do you know what Raintree does before they take on the brand? They have it, they have a candid conversation of, you need to spend X dollars. And I'm building basically your conversion funnels, your website, your story, your process, your team. It's like a data science team. And so I think, this is a fight. So I will throw it back at you, Nick, that your industry, you're not doing a good enough job of really educating us about, I think we need to stop. I think we need to look at conversion, lead gen and conversion. They need to be looked at as separate programs.
I agree with you, but let me be clear. It's not a fight that's ever going to be won, because there's not enough time to educate, because the franchisor, like, if they give a marketing thing a chance to win, like Brent and I were talking about this, the portals are working for him, but if franchisor gives something a chance to win, they give it like 90 days. They just don't let things go long enough. So we're never going to change this. But here's something that I think is deeply valuable back on Brent and what you're saying, Charles, and this is what I just wrote down. The mindset shift right now is leads are very black and white. Like, if you ask someone for their lead database, they send you an Excel sheet, right? And they say, here are my leads. I think the progression goes towards a 3-tier lead evaluation. And so they each get a 1, 2, or 3 based on how quality that lead is. And so you might get 100. It might take you might convert 1 out of 100 on tier 1 leads. You might convert 2 out of 50 on tier 2 leads. And you might convert 3 out of 25 on tier 3 leads. And if we change that route, now we're looking at the conversion behavior a little bit differently. All leads aren't the same. And now when we're setting up a KPI for an emerging franchisor, your job, go get 175 leads. And when you get there, you got to make sure you're getting that cadence through tier 1, 2, and 3. I think that's the shift. And if we can get brands there, now it's not about a January 1 through a December 31st. It's about, let's go get 100 tier 1, 50 tier 2, and 25 tier 3, and watch the conversion behavior turn. That should turn into, in this fake scenario, 6 deals.
You said the right word too, Nick, and you said mindset. And I think that's what this is. Where I think it's comparable to, you guys see inexperienced franchisees or just inexperienced business owners, and the way they run their business is they look at their checking account and they see how much money's in there and they make decisions based on that. Then you have experienced franchisees and experienced business owners that use P&Ls and cash forecasts and budgets. And they make decisions based on that. They're not just focused on the dollars in the account, like someone saying, where are my leads? When they're really saying, where are my deals? Where's those franchise fees in my account? They're saying, what's our process in place? What are the indicators on this P&L that we need to improve certain things here and there? And making decisions there. They're not just going straight to what's in the bank or where are the leads. And I think that's the difference there, is it's mindset. And how do you get folks to shift their mindset to say, you're asking the wrong question. Here's how we need to look at this. We need to use our P&L and our cash forecast, not just look at your checking account.
And what's the compound interest of franchising, right?
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's a great point. I think you're exactly right.
Well, and 9 out of 10 times, the emerging brands are going to have a leaky conversion bucket, and that becomes where the noise comes in, and you don't have the right data to evaluate your lead gen. And that's why, I mean, for startup brands, we educate that your launching of your franchise is really the next 24 months.
Yeah.
And so 24 months from now, can you tell me about your website, your uniques, your founder story, your first 2 franchisees? And then we can go explore broker networks and more advanced lead generation. And I think that's where the opportunity comes in, because everyone, at least on the very emerging end, they treat the process as static and then they run with it 2 years and get frustrated. So, but I see more often than not, right? If I even, Nick, when we're having conversations where, you're sharing like, hey, we did a lot here and the client got lift, and why are they not connecting it? I because I think it goes back to this issue of people are not giving enough value and weight to the conversion process itself, right? And my concern always is, like, as a service provider, my fear is the quiet client who never complains, you think is happy, and you lose that client, or they never sign up for some reason. And when we're educating franchisors is, your whole world can change with just 3 leads. Version 1 is 3 leads, no deals. Version 2 is 3 leads, right? Low lead count, but an amazing process that converts 1 deal, and your whole universe has changed.
That's right. I mean, I was just talking to a client of Charles, you and I was just telling you about it. We took a different approach. We're going after people that are looking for businesses for sale versus franchising. He got 4 leads, 2 of which were a robot. 1 he's actually going to meet for a meeting now. So 1 out of 4, and that could potentially buy. If I go tell a franchisor we got them 4 leads to that, they say that's a failure. And so I think there's still, like, and this is the whole industry, there's a miss in expectation setting, like, and shame on us, like the one that Charles, you were just talking about. If we come out and say what we do, and same with Brent, what we do, we make everything else win better, because, like, we don't get credit if a broker lead comes in, but the brokers will tell you, unless you have the buzz, we're not driving the candidate. And so, but that's expectation setting on the impact that we're going to have. It's not like the PR is not just going to be leads. It's going to be total buzz, all in noise. It's going to drive the candidate through. Simon did say this in our last 3 minutes. Who carries a can for the low conversion rate marketing or Frandev? I mean, I'll just say this. Like, you think about Facebook ads. There are Facebook ads that drive leads directly on Facebook, not driving the candidate back to the website. And so those tend to be, majority of them are tire kickers. They don't respond. They didn't even remember clicking on it. So marketing would say, look, we got you 100 people. So in that sense, marketing would say development is failing. They can't process. We got you the 100 people. But then on the other swing, I've seen plenty of development people that don't make the candidate feel comfortable. And so marketing brought in the right people. The person's kind of a dick. And so they don't make the people want to invest their life savings. And so then it's development. It's so circumstantial. Anything you guys want to add on that one?
I think marketing should carry the can for getting a qualified candidate committed to the process. That means they have 2 or 3 qualification calls. They understand it's a month-long process. They still have a call or 2. So we judge it usually off intro call or FDD call, which is a week or 2 in the process. That shows they've done it there. If they've gone that point and they've got the finances and the territory's open and they've already shown up to 2 calls, then it's on Frandev to take and make sure that it's the match, and they place it from there on out. So it's got to be a team approach, and they have to communicate, right? Like, you can't have silos in this. And while we've done our job, there's got to be back and forth dialogue to help each other get better, because they both have the same goal in mind.
That's a great question. So Brent, in the way you see it, marketing and development, is it the goal of marketing to get the qualified candidate to have the conversation and development, and after that's done, marketing checks the box and achieved its goal?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's a point in marketing that will get a candidate excited enough to want to really hear it out and be open-minded to what the process and what the product is. It's got to be more than just clickbait to get someone to fill a form out and then not show up. That's on them. If they're really generating demand, if it's true demand generation, maybe more than lead generation, then yeah, they've got to make sure that they've excited them and educated them enough to get them to the point of committing to that hour-long call and sitting through it.
And silly question, because this is just a sign of low intelligence when people ask you what's the one thing, but what in the development process, what's the most crucial part to the conversion the way you see it? Or is it just the process itself?
So you mean like the salesperson taking them through? Do you mean the stage?
Yeah, a qualified candidate comes through, feels good. It's in the hands of development team. What do winning development teams do that the losing teams are not doing?
The leading indicator is usually the drop off at FDD, right? And that's back to the point of a lot of this is on the brand and the model and how it's structured. Yeah. So in a brand that doesn't close at the same conversion rate as what we call runners here, brands that close a lot, you'll see that maybe 50, 60, 70% of the candidates will take an initial call. They'll look at the presentation. They'll like the look of it. Then they'll get on the FDD call where things get real and they'll be walked through what that looks like. And that's where you see a discrepancy between performers and those that are struggling. Candidates that fly through, they like what they see in your work, Charles, in that FDD, or they like the ability of the salesperson to tell the story of the FDD and answer the questions appropriately and work them through all the nervousness that goes on there, or not. And that can be, again, a brand deficiency. There might be high terminations, low item 19, high item 7, or it could be salesperson ineffectiveness, not knowing how to take someone through that stage properly.
That's helpful.
Good stuff, guys. Also, Brent, on that last note, I will say part of the problem in the sales process is the candidate doesn't know what an FDD is, and then you get intimidated. And I still think that's the big gap in the industry. Nobody's educated these candidates. So, but that's another episode. That's for another episode. This is another episode of Fran Fight. Charles,
it wasn't a very good fight.
Not really, but.
We have to pick something more contentious next week.
We just got to get Charles to call out companies. It's so good.
I got.